On today's prediction video, it's going to be two Florida teams, the Florida Gators and the Florida State Seminoles. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Going to Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day. And the reason that I wear these sunglasses is so that I don't have to look at your sorry. Apparently, I can't say that. Really, the reason I wear my sunglasses is so I can read stats, and it helps with editing. There you go. Don't forget to check out my friends at Tri-State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodsketch.com. Tell him Going to Blue Dude sent you, and you'll get 20% off. Today, we're going to be looking at the Florida Gators and the Florida State Seminoles. The game itself and both the seasons for the Gators and the Seminoles. First, we'll start with the Gators. Last year, they were 8-4, first in the SEC East. Dan Mullen was extended through the 2026-2027 college football season. Now the third highest paid SEC coach behind Ed Orgeron and Nick Saban, and the fifth highest paid coach in all of college football, bringing in a whopping $7.6 million a year. Florida had a really good offense last year. They averaged 39.8 points per game, that's 13th, and 509.8 yards a game. However, the offense has a ton of key losses. They lost a lot. They lost quarterback Kyle Trask, tight end Kyle Pitts, wide receiver Trevin Grimes, wide receiver Kadarius Toney, and one of their offensive tackles. I think Florida will take a significant step back in their offense this year, starting with their quarterback Emory Jones. In limited action, he was 11 for 32, that's 56.3%, threw for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, but still managed to throw 1 interception in his limited action last year. Dual threat quarterback, 32 carries for 217 yards, 6.8 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. I have a feeling that he will rely more on his legs than he will his arm, but we'll see. Here's what their running game will look like. Running back Damian Pierce, 106 carries for 503 yards. That's 4.7 yards a carry and 4 touchdowns. Running back Naquan Wright, 54 carries for 213 yards, 3.9 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. As usual, guys, there's going to be some tricky names on both Florida and Florida State's roster, so I probably will mispronounce some names. Now let's look at Florida's passing game. This is where I think they take the biggest step back this year, starting with the tight end. Replacing Kyle Pitts is going to be tight end Kemore Gamble, 10 receptions for 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now look at Florida's wide receiving core. Wide receiver Xavier Henderson, 9 receptions for 148 yards, 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Trent Whitmore, 10 receptions for 128 yards, 1 touchdown. The go-to wide receiver should be Jacob Copeland, 23 receptions for 435 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then there's wide receiver Justin Shorter, 25 receptions for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Rick Wells, 12 receptions and 120 yards. And wide receiver Jordan Pouncey, 1 reception for 27 yards. I think Florida will be more of middle of the pack when it comes to offense this year. So Florida fans are hoping their defense will be much better than it was last year. It was one of the worst they've had in a very long time, like 60 years. They allowed 30.8 points per game, that's 74th in the nation, and allowed 428 yards a game. Not good. On this year's defense, I do think the front 7 will be the strength, starting with the defensive line. Defensive end Brenton Cox Jr., 41 tackles, 21 by himself, 4 sacks, 2 pass deflections. The Penn State transfer. Defensive tackle Antonio Shelton, 13 tackles, 5 by himself, 3.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Zachary Carter, 36 tackles, 14 by himself, 5 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. Now Florida's linebacking core. Linebacker Jeremiah Moon, 14 tackles, 4 by himself, and 1 sack. Linebacker Mohamed Diabete, 67 tackles, 33 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Ventrell Miller, 86 tackles, 52 by himself, 3.5 sacks, and 3 pass deflections. And linebacker Trevez Johnson, 15 tackles, 12 by himself, and 2 pass deflections. So I do think Florida has a good linebacking core. It was their secondary last year that was complete trash. They have to be better in the secondary. They allowed 28 passing touchdowns last year. Not good. By far the worst secondary in the SEC. Here's what they look like this year. Cornerback Jaden Hill, 14 tackles, 10 by himself, 7 pass deflections. Cornerback Kaiir Elam, 39 tackles, 28 by himself, 2 interceptions, and 11 pass deflections. Free safety Rashad Torrance II, 25 tackles, 10 by himself, and strong safety Trey Dean III, 34 tackles, 22 by himself, 1 sack, and 1 interception. That secondary needs to turn over opponents more. They were puny in turning people over and allowing a ton of touchdown passes. That's exactly the opposite of what you want from a secondary. I think a combo of losing a ton of production on offense plus Missouri Missouri and Kentucky will be better this year, and then add in a tough schedule equals a significant drop-off for Florida in 2021. Here's Florida's 2021 college football schedule. They start off the season with the home game against FAU. Win. At USF. Win. And they get Alabama at home. That's a loss. Tennessee at home. Win. At Kentucky. Loss. Kentucky's going to be a much better team this year, and it is in Lexington. Vanderbilt at home. Win. At LSU. Loss. They're going to lose to LSU in back-to-back years. Then they get a bye week. They get Georgia and Jacksonville. Loss. At South Carolina. Win. Stanford at home. Win. At Missouri. Loss. So the two teams that I think is going to be a lot better this year, Kentucky and Missouri, Florida has to go on the road and play them. That's why I have those as losses. Then the last game of the season, a home game against Florida State. I will predict that here in just a little bit. So depending on that prediction, I have Florida either going 6-6 or 7-5. Now let's take a look at Florida State. Last year, Florida State was not good at all. They finished the season 3-6, 13th in the ACC because there were no divisions. Florida State is still recovering from the wreck that Jimbo Fisher left them in. But I definitely think that Mike Norvell has them headed in the right direction. The big question for me is, can Florida State get to a bowl this year? I think they have a shot. I think people have forgotten. Last year was Florida State's third straight losing season. That was unheard of back in the 90s and early 2000s. First, we'll start off with their offense. Florida State went out and filled a lot of holes with some quality transfers. Last year, they averaged 25.8 points per game. That's 86th. Averaged 398.8 yards a game. Here's a look at their offense, starting with the quarterback battle. First, you have quarterback Jordan Travis. Last year, he was 72 for 131, 55%, threw for 1,056 yards, 6 touchdowns, but 6 interceptions. He's a pretty decent dual threat quarterback, though. 97 carries for 569 yards, 5.9 yards a carry, and 7 touchdowns. But I think the odds-on favorite to win the quarterback job is UCF transfer Mackenzie Milton. But people don't realize this kid hasn't played football since 2018. He suffered a gruesome injury, so it's been a long road to travel for him. Here's his stats from 2018. 171 for 289, that's 59.2%, threw for 2,663 yards, 25 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. Dual threat quarterback, but I don't know if his legs are going to be as good as they used to be. 79 carries for 309 yards, 3.9 yards a carry, and 9 touchdowns. I think Florida State's going to have a pretty good running game this year. Starting with running back Jashawn Corbin, 81 carries for 401 yards, 5 yards a carry, and 5 touchdowns. Running back DJ Williams, the Auburn transfer, 38 carries for 199 yards, 5.2 yards a carry, and 3 touchdowns. Now I want to look at Florida State's passing game. I think it will be a little bit better as well, but I think the strength of this offense will be the run game. Starting with their tight end. Tight end Cameron McDonald, 23 receptions for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now here's a look at Florida State's wide receiving core. Wide receiver Keyshawn Helton, 14 receptions for 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Ontario Wilson, 30 receptions for 382 yards and 2 touchdowns. Incoming 4-star freshman wide receiver Malik McClain, 6'4", 195 pounds. And the redshirt freshman 4-star wide receiver Brian Robinson, he's 6'1", 185 pounds. Both of those guys are impressing the coaches a lot. They might be on the first string. They also added the Kansas transfer wide receiver Andrew Parchment. Last year he had 24 receptions for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the wide receiving core is a little young, but they have a lot of talent. Now let's look at Florida State's defense. The defense also added some transfers to fill in some holes. It's going to be much better than what it was last year. Last year they allowed 36 points per game. That's 107th in the nation. Terrible. And allowed 456.3 yards a game. Just plain awful, really. Here's a look at the front seven, starting with the defensive line. Defensive end Jermaine Johnson, the Georgia transfer, 14 tackles, 10 by himself, and 4 sacks. Defensive tackle Dennis Briggs Jr., 6 tackles, 3 by himself, 1 forced fumble. Defensive tackle Robert Cooper, 15 tackles, 10 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Now the linebacking core for Florida State. Florida State's got some pretty good linebackers, starting with linebacker Pierre Thomas, the South Carolina transfer, 32 tackles, 19 by himself, 3 sacks. Linebacker Amari Gaynor, 65 tackles, 36 by himself, a half a sack, 1 forced fumble. This guy is the leader of the defense and he hits really, really hard. Linebacker Stephen Dix Jr., 44 tackles, 17 by himself, and then another South Carolina transfer. Linebacker Jamie Robinson, 74 tackles, 47 by himself, 1 interception, and 4 pass deflections. Honestly, I think the secondary for Florida State will be the strength of their defense, mainly because of their excellent depth. They are very deep in the secondary. Quarterback Jerian Jones, 18 tackles, 10 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Quarterback Jarvis Bramley Jr., 26 tackles, 17 by himself, 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Defensive back Travis J., 26 tackles, 17 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. And free safety Renardo Green, 27 tackles, 18 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. I think Florida State will show signs of big improvement in 2021. Mike Norvell is recruiting at a high level at Florida State, and he's getting quality transfers. I think Florida State's in excellent hands with Mike Norvell. Here's a look at Florida State's 2021 college football schedule to see if they get bowl eligible. First, they get Notre Dame at home. Loss. But I'm telling you, this could go Florida State's way. Don't totally rule them out. Jacksonville State at home, win. At Wake Forest, win. Louisville at home, win. Syracuse at home, win. At North Carolina, that's a loss. Then they get their bye week. UMass at home, win. At Clemson, loss. NC State at home, loss. NC State's going to be a good team. Miami at home, loss. At Boston College, I think a mild upset. I'll give them a win. And then the last game of the season at Florida, I'll predict that here in just a second. Regardless of the Florida prediction, I have Florida State going to a bowl. Depending on that prediction, I have them going either 7-5 or 6-6. Now for the actual game prediction between Florida State at Florida. This is going to be at the very end of the year. I think by then, Florida's offense will be a little bit better than what it was at the beginning of the season. Florida State does take a big step forward, but I don't think they're quite there yet to beat Florida. I'm going to take Florida in this matchup. In a close game, though, I'll take Florida 31-24. I think this is going to be a fairly entertaining game, but we will definitely see a regression in Florida's offense and a progression in Florida State. So overall, I have Florida going 7-5, getting to a bowl, but definitely not contending for the SEC East. I have them finishing either 3rd or 4th in the SEC East. For Florida State, I have them finishing 6-6. So yes, getting to a bowl. And they'll probably finish 3rd or 4th in the ACC Atlantic. Definitely better than last year, but still a long ways to go. But I think they had the right coach to get them back on the right track. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.